Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another weekly dose of aviation. And coming up this week, an A340 lands with no flaps, a helicopter crashes, and Atlas orders a new plane. So, firstly this week we talk about Atlas Air buying the first ever Airbus aircraft. As we know, Atlas Air is a cargo company and they use mostly Boeing aircraft to transport goods across the world. They fly a bit to airports in Europe and outside of Europe, all across the world, but recently they have ordered over 10 Airbus's A350 freighter aircraft. This comes as quite big news, as this is the first time Atlas Air will be operating Airbus aircraft, so we will see how they do handling Airbus and if they'll buy more or if they will just stick with the current Boeing fleet. Now we go to Nepal, where as you can see a small helicopter has crashed in a field. As you can see, the helicopter was trying to take off and possibly moving some people or goods up the hill. As soon as the aircraft departed, it started its climb, and when it started to land, you can see that it started wobbling a bit and then crashed. We currently do not know the cause of this incident, but we sadly do know that everyone on board did sadly pass. This is quite an interesting crash, because as you can see, the conditions look quite stable for a helicopter flight. So unless the pilot was either trying to get a good landing, or it could just be simply that the terrain was uneven and the pilot was trying to even it out as much as possible. Either way, we'll probably know more about this soon, and I'll keep you guys updated about this. Now we go to Manchester Airport, where a Jet 2 737 was in storage for over 2 months, and on its first flight out it had an emergency. As you can see, this aircraft was heading from Manchester to Manchester, but it was doing quite a long flight just to see if the aircraft is up and running. As you can see, it departed straight out of Manchester, heading to the east, and then flew some circuits in the ocean. As you can see, the aircraft then started its return to Manchester, and over about Sheffield it squawked an emergency, so it was 77700. So then it started to return to Manchester, and it got priority landing at Manchester. As you can see, the pilot said it was nothing urgent, but it still needed priority to land. The aircraft is now back in maintenance, and we'll probably see it back in service shortly. Now we go to Zurich Airport, where Airbus A340 had an emergency whilst coming into land. As you can see, this Airbus A340 was coming into land to Zurich Airport with no flaps down. This comes as a hydraulic failure in the wings, according to the pilots. Interestingly enough, this was the second flap failure this aircraft had in 3 days. The aircraft is now currently in maintenance, and we do not know whether we'll see it back in service due to quite being an old aircraft and most airlines retiring the A340. Happily, the pilots did manage to land the aircraft and nothing major did occur. Emergency services were waiting either side of the runway, but happily they weren't needed. Then the pilots just taxied to the gate and everyone could disembark. All the cabin crew and the passengers were safe, and there was no injuries reported. Now, for the last part of this video, we head back to Manchester, where a Boeing 737-8200 series aircraft, operated by Ryanair, had an oil leak after landing on the runway. As you can see on flight radar, the aircraft landed on the runway and then started taxiing to the gate when it stopped due to something leaking out of either the wing or the engines. We are unsure, as not much detail has been said, but as you can see on the pictures, the aircraft did get surrounded by fire services, and I'm pretty sure there was a couple of maintenance vans. This made a lot of disruption at Manchester, as arrivals did have to be halted for about an hour before the aircraft could carry on taxiing. Surprisingly, the aircraft did taxi to the gate under its own engines, meaning no one had to tow it to the gate. As you can see also, this caused a lot of holding patterns over the Peak District, with approximately 5 aircraft being stuck in the holding pattern for over 30 minutes. Happily after this, the airport resumed activity as normal, and the aircraft is now also in maintenance. And that just about sums up all the weekly dose of aviation, as that's all that happened this week. As you can see, it's not been too bad of a week, but there's still been some interesting news and some interesting incidents. Once again, thanks for watching. I hope you have enjoyed this video, and if you have, please make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys again next week.